Bernie's announcement, in addition to saying at one point, this time is going to be different because we're going to win. And, look, I am most partial to the proposals that Bernie Sanders has proposed and Elizabeth Warren, more or less by far. They seem to be putting forward, and Bernie is yet to really, I think, roll out any new proposals, but certainly the Medicare for All, that many of the other candidates have signed on to. And Warren putting out proposals like producing generic drugs, like the one that she announced, and we'll talk about it in a bit, universal daycare. These are important proposals to get out into the conversation. And part of the reason why, and I've spoken to a lot of people about this who have said in many different ways that were the campaign 2 or 3 months longer, that primary campaign, had Bernie Sanders gotten into and decided to run 3 to 6 months earlier and genuinely believed he had a shot at winning when he entered, or even 3 to months, if he had gone in 3 months earlier and he would have picked up that awareness earlier, he could have very well won that primary in 2016. And this time he's going in, and he's going in to win it. And that's what he said in his interview. And that is not, I think people should have interpreted that as like some type of measure of confidence. And I think the guy has confidence and whatnot. But I think what it is it is a tacit admission that the last time he entered the race was because he was running a message campaign. And this time he's running a race to become the nominee.
Not to mention the president.
Well, and then ultimately the president.
Hashtag Bernie would have won.
Well, like I say,
hashtag Bernie will win.
Martin O'Malley would have won too, I think. But be that as it may, that was then. This is now. Here is Bernie Sanders talking specifically about Howard Schultz. And he had been quiet up to this point about Howard Schultz.
Howard Schultz has now said he would not run as an independent if the Democrats nominate a moderate.
Oh, isn't that nice? Why is Howard Schultz on every television station in this country? Why are you quoting Howard Schultz? Because he's a billionaire, all right? There are a lot of people I know personally who work hard for a living, who make $40,000, $50,000 a year, who know a lot more about politics than, in all due respect, does Mr. Schultz. But because we have a corrupt political system, anybody who is a billionaire who can throw a lot of TV ads on television suddenly becomes very, very credible. So what Mr. Schultz, what is he, blackmailing the Democratic Party? If you don't nominate Bernie Sanders, he's not going to run? Well, I don't think we should succumb to that kind of blackmail.
The other reason is that he represents an argument that some people make, which is if you're worried about Donald Trump, the Democratic Party, to win voters in various parts of the country, needs to pick somebody who is not so radical. That's also what his theory represents.
Well, I think his deeper theory is, hey, I'm a billionaire, leave me alone. And let me make as much money as I can without paying my fair share of taxes. He's a billionaire, he's thinking of running for president, suddenly he's a very famous guy. That is a problem with our political system.
I mean, not terribly different than what we were saying on the day that Howard Schultz was like all of a sudden on every single TV show. Suddenly, because he built up a coffee shop into a big business
which other people have also done.
Yes. That he is perfectly primed to step in and become president, and is treated as if he's a serious guy as opposed to, let's say, Donald Trump. And without any prior policy work, it's just that he went in and he bought Steve Schmidt and he bought Bill Burton, literally bought them for millions of dollars. And he bought his credibility, and he bought ads, and he bought media time. If I buy, I got news for you. If I go buy a 3-page spread in the New York Times, guess what I'm going to get? Somebody's going to write a story about the Majority Report. That's just a fact. And that in and of itself, if it's something as benign as, they did a profile on Sam because maybe it's related to his, $2 million buy of ads or whatever it is. But they did a profile on him. You know what? That doesn't have that great of, it's corrupt, but it's not that relevant. Nobody cares. So what? But when they're doing a profile on this guy because he's going to try and run for president, that's where you have the corruption of the political process. And that is, it's as if Howard Schultz showed up to provide the subtext for a lot of why Bernie's running, which is that we have a system that we have people who have amassed so much money that they have turned us to, they're plutocrats now. They had garnered so much money that they have an outsized power, significantly outsized power politically and socially. And that's the problem. So, I don't know, Bernie, I hope, sent him a muffin basket.
Seriously. God, just to watch that, whatever his name is, news guy sit there with a straight face saying, Howard Schultz represents an argument that a third-party billionaire is going to beat Trump. Like, God damn it, that sucks.
Well, the only even sort of like rationale, I should say, for Schultz's candidacy is this idea that the Democrats can't become too economically left because that won't appeal to the voters who supposedly voted Trump because they wanted to screw over the establishment, right? Like, that's the argument. And even in articulating it, it makes no sense.
Yeah, how'd that go the last time around? Well,
but put that aside for a moment. Just the argument, because it's all you put out there without any data. There's no like, this poll says that. It's just an argument that ostensibly sounds reasonable. But if you genuinely articulate the argument, of course it's absurd.
Yeah, and actually there is data that contradicts that.
Well, of course. But they can't get into data when they talk about it, or they won't be able to get the question out of their mouth.
Well, because it's not the data that's leading to the prominence of the arguments. It's the money behind them.
Yes. And this is what is both so gross and so powerful about Bernie Sanders' ability to raise the kind of money that he raised in the first 24 hours and in the week subsequent to his announcement. Like, this is, if you tell me how much money the candidates have on hand in terms of cash 9 months from now, 10 months from now, after Iowa, after New Hampshire, 13, 14 months out, after Super Tuesday, well, I guess 12 months out now, basically. If you tell me how much money, cash on hand, the candidates have on March 10th or March 6th, I can tell you who the top 4 candidates are going to be. There may be 3. That's just the reality of this process. When people get out of the race, it's going to be because they don't have cash. Sanders has announced he has over 1 million volunteers that have signed up.
Hell yeah.
For the 2020 campaign. And they are in every single congressional district. 1 million volunteers already. That's nuts. So we'll see. This is, and I will tell you that you look at there was polls that came out in New Hampshire, and he's got a decent sized lead there. Probably bigger than most of the states that he will have leads in. But 20 to 25% is a number that could win a lot of these primaries. Kamala Harris is going to be has a structural advantage on some level because of California as part of Super Tuesday. And although, Iowa and New Hampshire, then South Carolina, then Super Tuesday, March 3rd, I believe it is, next year, 2020. And coming out of those, it's not a winner-take-all type of situation. Coming out of those Super Tuesday, we're going to have a very good sense of who the top 5 or 6 candidates are. And money plays a big part, and obviously volunteers do too. But
I think Kamala Harris is the one to beat. I think Bernie and her are going to fight it out.
It's tough. You never know. Like somebody could pop out of Iowa that could be surprising, come in like a surprising second. A Rick Santorum situation. And
I've been there.
Who knows?
I've had those.
I don't even want to. Oh, geez.